Now, the treaty, in our conception of this thing, would create an oversight authority that we call the Governance Board. And the Governance Board, in our view, consists of representatives of the Palestinian and Israeli states, as well as outside members from other countries or institutions chosen by and acceptable to both the Israeli and Palestinian governments. The board then recruits what we would describe as an empowered executive to set up and run the special regime on their behalf, on behalf of Israel and Palestine. The special regime assumes responsibility for managing the issues and points of friction in the Old City, including public safety, access, religious and ancient sites, probably some property matters, and ensuring both religious freedom and equitable status and treatment for both the residents and the millions of visitors who pour into that old city and its holy sites in any given year. In our special regime, all functions and powers not assigned to the special regime rest with the two founding parties. So, citizenship, education, religious practice, health, tourism, culture, professional licensing, family, contract, and commercial laws, all these things remain the province of the two founding states. The Governance Board is the instrument through which the two states exercise their responsibilities and protect their interests in the Old City. We considered that the board be exclusively Israeli and Palestinian. But we concluded that the deep systemic trust that characterizes the relationships makes it more likely that a board of this type would have a better chance of succeeding if there were some outside members. And the role of the outside members would be to lubricate the relationship between the two parties and also to provide absolutely necessary links to the international donor community, because what we're designing is not cheap. We also felt that, Jerusalem is not a parochial matter, it's a global matter, and having some international involvement in the oversight of it is not out of line. Given the sensitivities and emotions that the holy sites are capable of stirring up, we concluded there needs to be someone with real executive authority in charge, because if peace is to succeed, the flashpoints in the Old City and its holy sites must be managed deftly and firmly, with a pretty strong hand. We had long discussions about whether the chief administrator should be elected, whether the chief administrator should be a committee, or an individual accountable to a council elected by the inhabitants. In the end, we decided against these and for an empowered executive position with real authority, both executive and regulatory, accountable to the two national governments. Not accountable in any other way, but to the two states. The first chief administrator, and this is a great job coming for someone who's, Nelson Mandela-like qualities. The job of the first one will be to oversee the design and establishment of a police service, a small civil service, and a commission to flesh out the regulatory and legal framework under which the special regime would operate. He or she will also have to manage the transition from direct Israeli rule over the Palestinian inhabitants of the Old City to a new situation without necessarily putting the special regime, between the inhabitants and their national governments. In our view, the chief administrator should be neither Palestinian nor Israeli, and should probably live and work in the Old City. Seems sensible that there be a term of office of perhaps 5 years, perhaps 7 years, and that the board should obviously have the power to remove a chief administrator for cause if necessary and replace him or her with another person. Now, the justification for something as unique and seemingly complex as what we're describing here rests with Jerusalem's status as a sacred site for millions of Muslim, Jews, and Christians. At the same time, the special regime's function does not relate to holiness, but to safety, security, and public order. Our proposal assumes that freedom of of religion and yes, etc. Only 24 pages to go, Michael. The customary practice that we know about in Jerusalem, which allows the three communities to actually work in some kind of dignity and predictability, those have to be part of what the special regime holds in place. But on the other hand, we believe that the custodians of the current holy sites must remain in control and manage the affairs of the site. It's not the job of the special regime to manage the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That belongs to the custodians. But the religious rights always need to be, in a place as sensitive as Jerusalem, have to be subject to the requirements of public safety and decorum, and that's where the special regime comes in. It doesn't determine what is holy, but it makes sure that those coming to take advantage of the holiness are safe and secure, and also that the sites that millions of people visit every year are safe in terms of the structures of the buildings and the things, things that can fall on people's heads if not properly looked after. We also, our idea also posits the creation of an advisory religious council that would be separate from the special regime, but set up by the religious leaders to act as a point of reference, consultation, and coordination between the special regime and between the religious groups, so that there are no surprises, because the trouble in Jerusalem often comes from one side surprising another. Yep, okay. Okay, so what I would like to close by basically saying that the fundamental idea has to do with special regime looking after the matters that relate to security, flashpoints, friction, while staying out of the way of the residents. And the final point is, how long should this be in place? How long should the special regime be in place? And the answer to that one, simple answer, is until the two sides come up with another solution. So how long is that? Well, some of our partners talk in terms of a few years. Others talk in terms of a few millennia. Our sense is that a regime like this must be in place long enough for an entire generation of Israelis and Palestinians to grow up under the benefits of a real peace agreement. Thank you very much.
I'd like to proceed now to the next section of our conference this morning. And that has to deal with a brainstorming session where we thought that people that had been deeply involved in the project with us, who are sitting around me at this table, could address particular concerns or viewpoints or attitudes that they thought had a bearing on this, or bring out what they thought was important, or where we could do more to improve, or in fact take issue with certain basic conclusions that we've done. We have a little over an hour to do this, so what I would like to do is to start by giving each of my colleagues up here about 7 minutes at the podium, or sitting if they wish, to expound their thoughts on what is happening and where this initiative gives value and where it should be refined, and perhaps what should be done with it now that we've completed the most important elements of our work, which are issued in the publication that I hope all of you have a copy of today. So first of all, I'd like to call on Danny Seidem, or excuse me, Danny, you're later. Gilad Sher, who's the former head of Bureau and Policy Coordinator for Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Israel's co-chief negotiator at Camp David. Gilad?